We're live. Hey, buddy.
Hey there. I like this weekly ritual of the we're live. I'm expecting the rituals of the week that and we're live.
And we're live.
Yeah,
Woohoo! We're
gotta have that
live.
one. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the way you asked me, am I ready to dive into the topic? I feel it's slightly like I've wandered into one of those evangelical churches that you guys do so well in the States. So
Hey,
how are you?
man. You can wander into my evangelical church anytime you want, buddy.
That's a long way
But
to go.
no.
8,000 miles round the corner. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I'm doing
absolutely.
well. Thank you, sir. Hopefully, you're doing well as
Yes,
well.
indeed. So yes, the sun is shining here, which is great. So when it happens, we're all very happy here in the UK.
We are broadcasting live into multiple groups,
Yeah.
channels, Facebook pages, etc. And so, welcome everybody. If you're watching with us live, we're going to do a recording of the E-commerce Leader podcast, the number one podcast for e-commerce on Spotify. When you use a dash between the E and the C, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, does it? It's like
No.
number one.
Yeah. Number one. That's the only thing that counts in America, right? Number one. Yeah.
At least it was
But
last time I looked. Yeah.
yeah, I have to say the audience does seem to be growing, and I hear back from
Mhm.
people. The quality of the people that are listening. I mean, the ones who bother to reach out to me is great. I mean, I've literally had some people doing mid seven figures in my master.
To go full time and to make the transition from having their online selling be a side hustle to being at their full time vocation. Okay, so I've got these two groups, right? So that makes sort of this interesting test zone of Group A and Group B and the differences. And so the first thing that I wondered about was, how does the CEO small group think about profitability versus the Replens Mastermind, because they're in very different places in terms of profit. Okay, so I just did this little surveys in Facebook groups. You can do those polls, and so the poll was like this. Um, it was the question was, how do you increase your profit? So that was the question I asked. And then I gave them 3 seeded answers, and then they could ask their own or give their own answers as well and vote on those. But my 3 seeded answers sort of won the voting. So the 3 seeded answers that I plugged in were study and learn from your P&L each month, quarter, and year was one option. Second option was migrate to higher margin products over time is the second option. And the third option was cut expenses, which frequently includes staffing and advertising costs. Okay, so those are the 3 options that people could vote on. And, I mean, people probably spent like 2 seconds on answering this poll. So it wasn't like they, prayed and meditated on these things or anything like that. So, but here was the difference. And this is the interesting part. The CEO small group, that is, again, sellers that are full-time, their number one response was study and learn from your P&L each month, quarter, and year. But the Replens Mastermind group, which again was mostly side hustlers who want to go full time, their number one answer by a huge landslide was migrate to higher margin products over time. Now, all of these are good options. I mean, like all 3 of those, responses are appropriate. The question is, what's your top emphasis? What's top of mind for you? Which was the interesting bit for me. And so for the people who are full-time professional sellers, top of mind is financial management, through the P&L tool, profit and loss tool. For the side hustlers, the top focus is on product. And so just a little nuance there, like a little tease or a little hint towards, directionally what is most appropriate. So Michael, I don't know if you have thoughts or ideas on that survey, if I was a jerk to do that or mean, or if that was cool. Hopefully everybody who participated in the survey could be listening to this conversation right now. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I want them to know these results and see
No,
kind of
I,
what this difference looks like.
I would certainly say no. It's a great thing to do a survey. I think it's marvelous to do that. And if you're going to be a coach of any description, whether it's in a group or in a one-to-one situation, you have to ask questions about not only where people start from. This is kind of a meta question because this wasn't really a question about their profitability. It's a question about their mindset around profitability, I
Hmm.
would
Hmm.
suggest, because really it's what do they think's important and what is actually important is actually quite hard to tease out. But I think
Yeah.
it's a very good question. I would say that's very, very interesting. And to your point, It's interesting that although I do see people that move business models, in other words, where they're trying to migrate to higher margin products over time, I would say that can tie in with your business model, because if
Hmm.
you're reselling things normally, although not
Yeah.
always, over time you'll have tighter gross margins than you would with a private label product,
Yeah.
with the caveat that it works. By the way, the
Right.
characteristics of profitability are different, shall we say. With reselling, you're more
With
likely to
models.
make a profit, but it's likely to be more smaller, so it's more predictable. With private label products, it's either going to make a loss or be pretty meh, pretty boring,
Right.
not much profit, or it will work properly. But
So to your
yeah,
point, I
yeah.
could have asked another question, which was or say it in a response, which was migrate to a better business model.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, better
inside
is an
e-commerce.
interesting word. I mean, different. I would say they have different characteristics. I
Hmm.
wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
say private label is a better business model than reselling, and there are different types of reselling. More stable is a wholesale type relationship,
Yeah.
where you're reselling the same products again and again. Somewhat like the next logical stage, I suppose, probably from replens. I'm not a replens expert, so I'm sort of
Yeah.
looking
Sure.
at the big picture model there.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, for those who are already full time, often the people that are transitioning over are pretty full time. Well, there's one guy who's part
Hmm.
time in the mastermind, but doing about $2 million a year in revenue, which is kind of amazing. But
It's a
he's
side
also
hustle. Wow.
transitioning. Yeah. So the first thing is they're not trying to do that at the early stages. And the second thing I would say is, migrating to higher margin products over time, for those who are established with private label type products, which is most of the people I work with, of course,
Hmm.
then they don't actually add higher margin products. They just add more products,
Hmm.
but they make very, very sure that the margins are, of the right amount. So they're not
Hmm.
going for low margin products, but you can't really go from 30-40% margin to 70%. That's probably just not going to happen, because if you do, your competition will see it and reduce the price. So there's a self-correcting mechanism there. So I think there is a certain degree to which you can only go so far with that idea, and then
Hmm.
after that, you're right, you just have to
Yeah.
make sure that you run it for profit, and that's
Yeah.
the missing piece.
Run it for profit. I love that
Hmm.
phrase. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So that's the first bit of sort of interesting content for this conversation. The second bit is this new survey that came out from Jungle Scout. And I don't know if you've seen it or not. We'll have it in the show notes. It's very interesting. It came out in January, so it's new information. And it basically asks the question, how much money Amazon sellers make? And so we can have, everybody should go through this, but let me just point out three or four of the kind of bullet point takeaways from it. It's very interesting. Um, Average monthly sales in the largest cohort of Amazon third party sellers, let's put it this way, the largest cohort sold between $1,000 and $5,000 per month. And that was 20% of all third party sellers that responded to the survey. So 20% of the sellers, which is again the largest cohort, sell between $1,000 and $5,000 per month, just in top line sales. So that kind of gives you your bearings around, a chunk of people will sell below that, and then chunks of people sell above that. But that's the biggest cohort. Then second fact is only 43% of third party sellers have ever made over $100,000 in sales. So you're getting into the more rarefied air as you start to go over $100,000 in sales, and then 24% of them have sold between 100,000 and $1 million in sales. So that just kind of gives you sort of the bearings in terms of top line sales number. And then there's information in this set of survey responses about profitability. The one that stands out to me that I'll just kind of camp on is 42% of the Amazon third party sellers have made less than $25,000 in profit. So 42% have made less than $25,000 profit, which of course is not enough to live on. I mean, that's not enough to, depending on how long they've sold on average, but there's just not a lot of profit there. And so, my summary of this information, Michael, I'd be interested in your summary of it because you're much, much closer to Amazon sellers than I am in general. My summary is that it's becoming a very low barrier to entry situation, but profit is much more elusive. So sales are not hard to obtain. Profit is hard to obtain.
Yeah, I would say, as a summary of Amazon as a platform for third party sellers, that's a very good summary if you want to put it in a nutshell, which is yeah, what can I say? I guess we need to just remember the simple public statements that Jeff Bezos has made for decades, and I'm sure that whoever's making them on his behalf in the future will say similar things, which is customers. He said something like, I cannot imagine a time when customers will not want these three things: greater selection, lower prices, faster delivery. Greater selection creates more competition, which pushes price down. Lower prices is a statement of intent. The other thing he says is your margin is my opportunity, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
there is absolutely explicit downwards pressure on price, which of course means profit. And so therefore Amazon is always going to be geared to revenue creation, and they are very, very good at finding and keeping customers, and conversion rates are incredibly high, you know, in the 20, 30, 40% range, not 1, 2 to 3, 4%, whatever it is in your own Shopify or WooCommerce, whatever site. So to that point, the biggest fear of all Shopify or direct to consumers site owners is, I guess, crickets, i.e. nobody visits, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And the biggest fear of Amazon sellers is the same, but that is completely misguided, because the thing you should be worried about isn't sales, it's profit. So it is a platform that seduces you and gets you excited about sales and unit sales and revenue and just basically activity. And that is a great sign of some kind of life in an early stage direct-to-consumer site, and pretty meaningless in the Amazon space. So it is absolutely a disease that can overcome anybody to forget to take profit from Amazon. So that's why I think it's a really important topic for established business owners, not just people who are new. Really,
but it's understandable as to why new folks will focus on top line sales, because it is necessary for the e-commerce business. It is necessary to have large sales, or sales. It's, you know, growing, a living, and creating a successful company. And so, but it is a first milestone. It's a first, you know, hurdle to overcome. If you don't have sales, you're completely frustrated in every way. So that is a first milestone. But what happens quickly, and this is the mental transition I think that I see people not making, is they blow past that milestone. They get sales, like they just like, boom, they blow up, you know, 6 figures of sales, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, $1 million a year of sales. But they don't make the transition to say, okay, I've met that milestone. Now I need a new obsession for my, you know, time and energy. Because if sales is your going in obsession, if you get into the grind and you're thinking about your business all the time, it can be easy for you to not step back and say, wait, that was a goal, that was a means to an end goal. You know, that was a step on my journey towards something much greater. Now I need to reorient myself to say that is not where I'm focused now. It cannot just be at, you know, double my sales. That's a treadmill that many people are mentally on, that they do not need to be on, because they have so much sales velocity, much more than they need to make a good living. And that, I think that's what I observe as a coach sometimes, is sometimes I'll talk to people and I'll say, what do you want to do this month? Or what's your goals? Or, you know, what are you focused on? You know, just an open-ended question. And more often than not, it's sales goal, you know, more sales. I got to get more customers, got to get more, you know, more top line units moved. And my voice of commentary frequently is, well, you know, let's look at the P&L. What do your profits look like? What is your business finances looking like as a whole? That's generally what I bring to the party as a coach. So anyway, so this Jungle Scout survey is helpful in that regard. Now let's talk about the third piece of information before we get into our 7 steps for creating a highly profitable e-commerce company. And that is just a reference to Mike Mcelowitz's book, Profit First. And if you're not familiar with that book, I would encourage you to get it. My wife and I, Cinnamon, went through it together and really liked it. We did not implement it, but we really liked the focus, the topic. I should say this: we didn't implement his system because we have our own system. I guess that's a key point. But his whole formula is like the idea of the book, Profit First, is basically this. This is his core thesis in a nutshell. He basically describes himself as a successful entrepreneur that wasn't good at money management, and frequently scaled businesses that were not profitable. and he would have this crisis of no cash, or kind of always be paycheck to paycheck, never paying himself, even though he was scaling these businesses. And so he came to this revelation that profit was obviously the most important thing. And so his formula he describes as we're all familiar with. The formula for business is sales minus expenses equals profit. And his commentary is that formula does not result in a good outcome. So he switches around and he says sales minus profit equals expenses. And the concept that he uses is just pay yourself first, have a system by which you extract the profit component of your sales quickly, efficiently, and have an allocation percentage that you focus on. And he does that through a whole set of literal checking accounts that he wants you to set up, like 5 core checking accounts. And that's where it kind of fell off, the wheels fell off for Cinnamon and I, because we didn't feel like we needed to do that. But that's his core system, is this idea that profit is central and needs to be addressed early. And I know, Michael, like a phrase that you like to use is like, we've already used it, but you always talk about from the beginning, build it for profit, start with profit from the beginning, and you use profit first for your business. So I'd love your thoughts and ideas on it.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's a very good book to read. I was recommended it by a reselling a reseller, Amazon reseller, and coach for resellers called Robin Johnson from. She changed the name of the business. I can't remember what it's called.
Best from the Nest is not.
That's the one. Yes, Best from the Nest, which a kind of slightly mysterious name, but yeah, lovely lady, very very feet on the ground. She'd actually been I think she'd been some kind of pastor or something, some sort of religious as her job, and it basically was pretty broke and got into Amazon selling and did it really well. But she's very focused on that. And I think, is the system over-engineered? I think it depends on how you do it. And I'm interested in how you suggest measuring this stuff, because I think the concept is by far the most important thing, like a lot of business books. And I'm not saying that it's not a good book, but I've got a copy here myself, and it sits near my desk, which means I value it, because I literally, physical proximity books to my desk indicates it's one of my go-to books. So I think the concept's really important. I think having a lot of checking accounts depends on how you run things. I've naturally tended to do that over years. So for me, having the different accounts has been a natural way to run things for the coaching business. So just to run over it, just from memory, it's the sort of income account. You've got your personal profit, you've got OPEX, or operating expenses, which includes everything, not just overhead. Then there's tax, and then there's profit to be retained in the business, basically. So I think those are they're kind of goals made concrete in business accounts. If that's messy and it doesn't work for how you run your accounting, then I totally get that. That might be a messy way of doing it. I mean, for me personally, I'm pretty bad at running conventional accounts, which I know is bad, by the way. I'm not suggesting anyone follows that example. But if that's you, then as a starting point, it's not a bad idea to use them, I think.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I would highly encourage people to get it, absorb it, think about it as a starting point. Okay. So I've teased everyone with this idea of 7 steps to creating a highly profitable e-commerce company. We better deliver here. So let's dive into these. And so I think this has all been preparatory to this list here in terms of the backstories on these various topics. So let's dive into it. So the first thing I would highly encourage people to do, as you might guess, is create a high quality profit and loss tool or statement that you review monthly, quarterly, and annually. Now, if you're not comfortable building that yourself, you QuickBooks Online is a tool that many people use. You can use Xero. You can use other online tools. You can have a CPA do this for you. Although I will say I have seen clients who are hampered by having a CPA or other person be the intermediary to their data. And I think that most e-commerce operators that are maximally efficient know how to look at the P&L themselves in QuickBooks Online, can fiddle with it, look at reports, run the numbers. Now, maybe they have somebody clean up their books and tune it for them, but I think they know how to have their hand on the switch in terms of knowing what the profit and loss statement looks like. And if you're not familiar with that phrase, if it's new to you, it's one of the core financial management tools that businesses are run by. A profit and loss statement is very, very common. We've talked about it in other podcasts before. So that's the first thing, and having it done well so that it's categorized efficiently on both the income and expense side, so you have real visibility into your numbers, is the key thing. Frequently, like if your CPA makes a profit and loss statement for you, they'll have it categorized in a way that makes sense to them, but frequently in a way that's not clear to you. So for example, if I say to one of my coaching clients, how much did you spend on advertising last month? If the P&L isn't structured profitably, they're like, well, there's a line here for Amazon AMS ads, and well, that's actually not, that's commingled with my Amazon revenue. I can't really see it. Then there's some Facebook ads money dribbled over here. I guess that would count. And it's just kind of disparate line items in your P&L. And so you want to have it categorized by real clear things. How much do you pay for W-2 employees? How much do you pay for 1099 contractors? How much do you pay for VAs that are off even 1099 contractors, but they're like out of country, so you still pay them? How much do you pay for advertising? And then those things unlock, in a good P&L, so you can have a little bit more granularity to it. So anyway, so that's the first step. And the monthly review of that, quarterly review of that, and annual review of that over time will put your mind right, I guess you could say. It is a mental, it is almost not about numbers. It's not about operating details. It is about your priority and your focus. And I think that first step is critical to say to yourself at the end of every work month, did we make a profit? What exactly was it? What contributed to the lack of profit or the success? And how does it stack against the expenses in my business and what's left for me and my family at the end of the month? That mindset, I think, is the number one thing that every successful e-commerce operator will develop or needs to develop if they're going to be successful.
Agreed.
That,
yeah,
Michael?
There's lots of good points you made there. First of all, having a CPA as an intermediary, I think really they need to be your kind of native guide, but you're the one actually hacking through the undergrowth. I think that you need to have them there to explain to you. I think the critical thing with the CPAs is to be very, very clear what is you're trying to achieve with them. First of all, if you're getting them to do your annual taxes, whether corporate taxes or if you're working as a sole trader or an individual trader, as you call it in the States, that's one job. But that's a very, very different job from what we're discussing, I guess, which is management accounting. And I think that's often hugely neglected because, it feels like a technical specialist area that we want to keep at arm's length, as opposed to understanding that it's a little bit like if you drive a car and you just use it for commuting, then if it goes wrong, you take it to the mechanics and they sort it out for you, and you don't want to know and you don't want to get your hands dirty. But if you are a professional race driver, you need to understand the machine, and when you go to the mechanics, you need to stand there tinkering alongside them and really get your hands dirty. And I couldn't agree more with that. I think if you're hands off with your finances, then your business is going to tank eventually because it's too critical.
Yeah, totally.
So
agree.
That's really important. The second thing you said about this, the categorization piece, like your accountant doesn't understand your business like you do. So if you let them do standard categorizations, they're so general they can apply to lots of different businesses, which for tax accounting probably is necessary.
Yeah.
But for understanding is almost useless. So I absolutely agree with that. You have to sit down with them and explain your business to them. Otherwise, why would they understand it? It's just critical.
And I would say that the refinement of your P&L over time is how this works. First, you take a whack at it, and you look at it, and you ask yourself questions. Well, what about this? What about that? And you don't have clarity. And then you realize there's higher and better functions for organization of the P&L. And so it will take you 6 months or a year of looking at it every month before you've got it 100% dialed in, so you can ask and answer questions super efficiently about your numbers. And so it is a process. It's a process to get refined. And so I would just encourage everyone to start that practice. Set aside an hour or two, like let's call it the 5th or 6th of the month, to review your prior month's numbers. And if you can't have it totally cooked by the 5th or the 6th of the month, then there's a different problem in your business. You've got an intermediary, or it's just too slow or something like that. So that's that's the goal. Okay. So the second step in creating a highly profitable e-commerce company is to, I know it sounds stupid to say, but it's like the obvious thing: set clear profit goals and work to achieve them. The proxy for profit goals that many new people say is, I want to be a 7-figure seller. That's like their proxy in their mind for success. But actually, Michael, you and I have worked with many 7-figure e-commerce sellers, and we can tell you that is not a proxy for success. The proxy for success, like you just got to break it down. Like, well, what's the goal behind that goal? The goal behind that goal is a profit lifestyle outcome of, personal reward and, whatever in your mind you have on that list. Um, going on the big vacations or buying the big house or the big car or doing the big charitable thing, all of that. Those are the goals behind the goals. And that's super important. So I would just say you need to set a monthly profit target. And then that needs to roll to the quarterly profit target and an annual profit target. And many e-commerce businesses are seasonal. So, you'll have a super amazing whatever November, but like a horrible June. So, you do need to do it over the course of a whole year. But having those clear goals is, incredibly important. And as they say, if you don't have any goal, then you can shoot anywhere you want. You'll never, you will not be hitting a goal if you don't have a goal. And so that's, it's just an incredibly important component to this whole idea. And the question is, what's the goal? Many early e-commerce sellers, a simple goal could just be to double their profit. You know what your profit number is if you've done a P&L, and the first goal could be double your profit, and do that as quickly as you can over and over, until you get to a life-changing number, to a go full-time number type thing. What are your thoughts on that one, Michael?
Lots of thoughts. I mean, first of all, you're right that the idea of being a 7-figure seller means nothing. It's seven figures of revenue means turnover is the word we use in British English. And I guess that I was about to say English isn't a thing, but you know what I mean. It just means money's going through your accounts. It doesn't mean you get to keep any of it. And actually, you might be paying Amazon or your customers for the privilege of selling on Amazon often if you do the numbers, and that's horrible, but it's true. So I can say for a fact that I know 2 or 3 7-figure sellers who make the profits that make me cry on their behalf, and I kind of gently, and I'm getting a bit more direct these days for their sake, it doesn't change my life, but just begging them to make sure they're profitable now. Then they keep putting it off, and you can put it off when you're a 7-figure seller. You can put it off forever. The idea that profit will appear one day when you hit a certain business size is kind of seductive, but it's really dangerous. And I just think you have to guard against that. And if a profit and loss tells you that your private label business model won't be profitable because of the size of business you're running, then don't run private label yet. It's too early. I think you have to be super clear that the only thing that matters is profit, and just be brutal about that. And because it's tough on the ego, it's horrible when you sit down with your accountant or a coach and you dig into the numbers really hard, and you realize, oh my goodness, I've done $500,000 last year, and I made about 20,000 in profit, and a business I reviewed with somebody just the other day has done not a client of mine, but I'm helping him to potentially sell it on. And actually there's lots of great things about his business, but something really terrible is happening right now. And it's horrible, that conversation, but you've got to be willing to confront the truth. I think it's the Stockdale paradox, right? You've got to have the faith that you'll be able to build your way out of it because you're an entrepreneur and you'll do what it takes, but you've also got to have the willingness to confront reality, and that's tough. That's tough, but that's what makes a real entrepreneur.
Stockdale paradox?
Stockdale's paradox is one Jim Collins thing, but he was I believe he was certainly American. I think
Vietnam,
he was
POW.
Vietnam, or possibly even Korean War. I think it was Vietnam War, and he was a prisoner of war, and obviously absolutely horrendous conditions. And he survived mentally when others didn't, and eventually got rescued. And I guess the mentality is that idea of the blend between absolutely confronting reality and having faith that you will have the resourcefulness to work your way out of it.
Love it. Okay. All right. So here's the third suggestion for creating a highly profitable e-commerce company, and I need to explain this one. So tune into this. This is valuable. The third one is a little bit of an abstraction, so I'll walk you through it. The phrase is widen the jaws. Widen the jaws. Now, this phrase, widen the jaws, I learned from a guy named Atul Tandon. He used to be a senior global leader at Citibank, and then he came to work for the charity I worked for, and I worked for him, and he was senior vice president of marketing, and now he's the CEO of Opportunity International in the United States, which is a really cool micro enterprise organization. And his phrase "widen the jaws" he learned from his bosses or whatever at Citibank, or came up with it. I don't know, but it's this simple idea, and he applied it to all of his managers who were trying to make sales and grow in the charitable context, but it applies to business as well. The idea of widen the jaws is, if you look at a line chart for your sales and your expenses together. So like last year's sales and expenses, a year before that, year before that, year before that, you get two lines, like, going ideally up and to the right as you plot them over time. And the top line is, of course, sales, and the bottom, the one below that, would be expenses. And the gap in the middle, if you just draw a little, like a little line in between, like a little mouth, it looks like a shark. It looks like something's opening its mouth. And so that's the concept of widening the jaws. And what did he mean? What did he mean by that? How does it apply practically? What it means is, you want to grow top line sales, yes, but you want it to grow. You want your expenses to grow slower. And if you think about it, that widen the jaws, the space between the top line sales and the expenses is your profit. So in essence, the profit growth is a function of the top line sales going up and the expenses staying flat or just growing slower. And when that key situation occurs, you're widening the jaws. And so this is the third concept. I know it's a little bit of an extraction and abstraction, and it kind of has to be explained, but the question related to, creating profitability in business is tied directly to this little concept. And so there's two parts of it. You do want to migrate towards selling higher margin products or higher price products over time. That's sales success over time is key. But you also want to migrate towards lower costs of sales and operating methods over time. So let me just walk through this. So third tip is widen the jaws. How you do that is number 4. Fourth tip is migrate to selling higher margin products or higher price products over time, and to increasing sales velocity. And then number 5, the fifth tip, is migrate to lower cost of selling and lower cost operating methods over time. And there is a ton we could unpack in these little concepts. What are your thoughts on that, just in general, widen the jaws? I know we've talked about this before in prior podcasts.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to cover it again. It's so important. I mean, the first thing is, I like this idea of which you're going to have to fight for. Let's say that to get your top line sales to go up without just the revenue, just the costs line going up, is very hard, because in a physical products based business, obviously, I know your business is primarily digital products, but we both work with, and I am in the business of physical products, and decoupling those two is really, really hard. And I think you just have to make it a real mission to reduce your cost of goods sold as a percentage of your revenue over time. And that can be done, but you just have to make sure you negotiate really, really hard with suppliers, that you have always got a plan B with suppliers, that you work with people who have access to bulk buying and bulk sort of discounting, whatever it is that you can do. And that, by the way, to actually achieve that in the short and medium term right now is super hard, because the cost of goods from China is famously going up about 6%. The inflation rate for that running sort of annualized event, and the American, the Fed and so forth is concerned about, just generally speaking, inflation across the whole economy based on that number alone. So it is not going to be an easy year to reduce your expenses, let me just say now. And freight has tripled in costs often there. You're getting a 40-foot container from China to UK has gone up from like about $12,000, sort of $4,000 last year to about 12 now. So there's some real serious price pressure. So this is not going to be an easy or a short-term win. Let's just say that.
Which leads to the idea of inflationary prices, which I mean is what everyone's talking about. Is how does all of this cost on the, on the manufacturing side and product creation side bleed into raising prices for consumers? Now, if you have pricing power and you don't use it, you're not using a tool that you could otherwise be using to increase profits. So that whole exploration of pricing power inside your business is fascinating. Amazon does have the opportunity to do, I forget the tool that Kyle always tells people to use, but to do serial split testing of prices.
Yeah, splitme.com's pretty good if that's
there
the
you
one.
go. Yeah. So you can split test your prices and discover for yourself what your category's pricing power looks like, and actually optimize for the highest price point sales, with even the goal. You can plug in goals and say, I want to sell for the goal of profit maximization, not sales velocity maximization. So these are very meaningful, I think, things to explore. I guess I like the idea of widen the jaws because I found it to be true over time. Cinnamon and I've been selling for 13, 14 years now, and I've been full time since January 1st, 2014, with her. When you focus on this idea of widening the jaws, it gives you different things to focus on in your business over time. But all of them lead to profit maximization. You sometimes, and over the course of our lives, business life, we've done this. Sometimes we're focused on pricing. Other times we're focused on how to get our cost structure lower. Other times we're focused on transaction costs. Other times we're focused on product lines and the values to them. Other times we're focused on business models and the values for profit associated with them. And so I think that's the reason this is so fascinating, is because it does give you 4 or 5 things to focus on. One of the responses to the survey that I did in the Replens Mastermind group was to ask the question, and someone responded by saying, one way you can to increase profits is to focus on cash back, credit card, rewards points, other structural discounting methods. And the person's totally right. If you, for example, we all have heard these stories of people run all of their business expenses through their credit card, and then they get all their travel zeroed out because they have so many points that they can use for travel and that kind of thing. So these kinds of structural things go into this idea of lowering your operating methods over time. And there's just so much to be done there that I think is very fascinating. So, you're muted, buddy.
Sorry. So you're right that we have to be willing over time to, whilst retaining this basic concept, obsession, focus of profit first above all, and widening the jaws over time, which I think is an excellent aim. That we're going to have to be prepared to change our focus in how we do that quite a lot over time. As you say, sometimes it's price maximization and therefore profit maximization. And split testing is an excellent thing to do that. But I do think that for the majority of Amazon sellers that I know that are serious and importing mostly from abroad, that's a huge challenge at the moment, and that implies possibly quite a radical pivot, at least maybe for the next 6-12 months, and who knows how long it's going to be that the price is so high. This may be the new normal for another year or two. I don't know. I mean, as there's various different factors that go into it on the supply side, real shortages. Then we may have to pivot and start sourcing locally that which we've been selling from a long way abroad and that sort of thing,
And we've talked about that before, how the value proposition of local sourcing really radically changes your cost structure and business methodologies. You've talked about that in your cash conversion cycle training, and that's really a powerful idea. Yeah,
it is, and that's with the cash flow kind of head on, and that actually changes the working capital needed in the business. But with a profit head on, that was not, for example, if I source stuff in the UK to sell in the UK, quite often it's going to be so expensive there is zero profit to be made. But once you start comparing sourcing, for example, in Eastern Europe with sourcing from China, not only is the cash conversion cycle much longer, so the working capital needed is worse, but it was more profitable to source from China until, a few months ago with many product lines, and it no longer is because the raw material costs have pushed the prices up. 6% is an average. So the factory gates for the smaller sellers I work with sometimes maybe up 10%, maybe even more. And then the freight costs have been often just tripled. I mean, that is not a subtle move. In that context, it's not just a cash thing anymore. It's also a profit thing. So I think that sourcing locally-ish or more locally than you would have done becomes much more critical because of the freight cost, if nothing else. So for those who are importing, that's a critical thing that everyone's having to wrestle with right now.
And of course, the 30,000 foot view on that is just the obvious thing that your sourcing strategy impacts your profitability.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's like the obvious thing, but one of the things you can obsess over for, a period of time is your sourcing options. And, and so I love the emphasis in that. Okay, so let's keep going. So we've talked about 5 of the, methods for creating a highly profitable e-commerce company. The number 6 is find a coach, mentoring group, or, small group that focuses on these ideas. Now, that's a rare thing to find, but I would just encourage everybody to try to do that. To be honest, one of the only conversations that most e-commerce people have about profitability is probably when they sit down with their CPA at tax time. That's the small group. Your small group is you and your tax person, and if that's the only small group you have and it only meets once a year for 1 hour to review your tax filing, you're not getting an optimal situation to occur there. So I would just encourage everyone, find a coach or mentor or mastermind group where you can say to them, help me with profitability in my business, guys. What's your best thinking? What's your best idea? What's your best, way forward? How have you gone from good to great in terms of profitability? And have them not give platitudes and not give generalities at any random person. Like your no disrespect to my mom, she won't watch this, but the stuff your mom could say to you, even though the people who don't actually even run a business could say to you. So you don't want that. You want actual granular, specific things from a group of e-commerce sellers. And that's a real trick. It's a real challenge because, even just finding business owners that you can sit down with and talk to can be tough, let alone e-commerce operators. Yeah. And so I think this is an important piece of, your growth and goals of getting towards profitability. Yeah.
I think you're so right. Well, you just said you sit down with your CPA once a year to review your tax, and then suddenly you look back at the year with great clarity, but like about, normally months after the business year has ended. So maybe 18 months after it's happened.
Yeah. It's not a good mastermind strategy.
No, it's not a good way of doing it. I mean, put it this way, it's a great thing to meet with your CPA, but not once a year. And also, as we said before, but it's worth emphasizing yet again, being able to deal with tax codes is obviously critical so you don't go to jail in the most crass way of putting it, or get fined or whatever. Yeah. But that is not the same skill set as, number one, being able to do cost management, sort of management accounting type work. I mean, some CPAs will do both, but that's one thing. But the other thing is, it's not the same skill set as being able to explain numbers in a language that humans can understand to a small business owner. And that's a particular skill. And I think that I've worked with some accountants who are really, really good at that, and some who really aren't. And that's critical. And then once you find that person, you still got to, speak with them. So yeah, I think there's no substitute for fellow e-commerce operators, but who are profit savvy. I couldn't agree more with that. And the regularity of the rhythm is also important.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Annual is just a disaster as a rhythm goes,
No, I think the reality is, I think there's probably a very common trajectory that the journey looks like this. When you start selling online, you might not even have a high quality CPA you work with if you've done your own taxes or something like that prior to becoming an entrepreneur. But then you'll start this routine where you meet with them annually, and then you'll be like, oh, we need to start meeting quarterly. And then it's like, oh, we need to start meeting, even monthly. And that somewhere in that spectrum probably has to do with how sophisticated your business is, how much money you sell, top line sales and revenue or a profit. And so that's just a very common, piece. But beyond just meeting with your CPA, you need to meet with other people who can speak into these issues. Okay, so that's the sixth tip for creating a highly profitable e-commerce company. And the seventh one is similar. It's study and learn everything you can about business finance. Now, that's a boring topic, conceivably, so you have to learn from good people. I think the success of Mike Mcelowitz's Profit First book simply comes down to the point of he made a focus on business finance interesting. And he did it in such a way that people would listen and hear the audio. I listen to the audiobook, which he reads and is actually very entertaining. And so I think that's the reason it was successful, is just because he took us all into the swimming pool together, made us look at the business math, and made us realize we care about this stuff. This is like our top thing. Our top thing is this stuff, but it can get so boring and so brain numbing that you quickly peel off and you want to just go back to something more fun, like how to blow money on Facebook ads. But anyway, so I think this is the important point here: is you need to figure out how to learn. Now, a few tips. YouTube is now streaming many university level courses. You can get courses from like MIT or like many university level finance courses, small business accounting, and on and on. So if YouTube is a better medium for you than reading a book, then just start, once a month, start watching a YouTube lecture from, somebody on small business accounting, small business finance, all of those elements, and find other ways to learn: podcasts, books, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the seventh tip for creating a highly profitable e-commerce company. Michael, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, quite a few other resources to add to the pot. I guess this is going to be more for the more advanced sellers, I guess, in a sense. I don't know if advanced is the right word. More established, more experienced in some ways, but not necessarily more profitable or more financially sophisticated. I would say, first of all, to the trajectory, you're so right that is absolutely the one that most people go on. You don't even have a CPA. You meet them annually, quarterly, and monthly. The next thing to do that I've seen in the masterminds is people go from having being their own financial director, i.e. they're still responsible for finances, to hiring a fractional CFO or financial director or chief financial officer to having a full-time one. And that's a great day when you get a full-time, really quality FD or CFO. You're probably doing at least several $1 million a year in my experience. That's when that tends to come in. I think it's so important. I think people obsess rightly about sourcing quality earlier than they obsess about the quality of their financial management. They're two sides of the same coin. The more you're going to be putting deep amounts of money, hundreds of thousands or even millions, into the sourcing piece, the more you've got to have fantastic quality understanding of cash flows and profit. Otherwise, quite quickly, you end up creating a machine that delivers pretty amazing quality products to the customers and makes Amazon profits and makes you almost nothing. And that's really tragic, to the point we made again. I see people who are otherwise very sophisticated operators who are not sophisticated about the finance. And it's a disaster for them, not for everyone else. So don't obsess with sourcing without obsessing about finance, what I would say. The other things I would say, just two great books. One is Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs by Karen Berman, who's sadly deceased now, and Joe Knight, who's a former CPA in sort of small businesses, American chap, but 100% applicable to UK. Very, very good book. The other thing I'd recommend is the Corporate Finance Institute, which is a lot cheaper than Harvard or business school or MIT, although they've got incredible reputations, and rightly so. But they do actually have links where they've actually done training for a lot of the big merchant banks in London. So that's, apart from Wall Street, the greatest sort of financial centre in the world. It's had a bit of a kick in the teeth from Brexit, but it's still very big. So those are serious people, but they're actually pretty affordable courses if you really want to educate yourself. And frankly, if you're going to go into the millions of dollars realm with the revenue, I think you owe it to yourself to really get educated on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely right. Love it. Somebody in the chat, Kimberly, just said Coursera is also a good resource for inexpensive training. Of course, Udemy would fall in that category as well. The online training portals, of course, are great for this type of thing. So find the best reviewed, best loved small business finance course on Coursera or Udemy, and dig into it. Just go through that, and you over time. My thinking on this stuff is basically over time, consume a lot, and build your own process, build your own. In essence, you metabolize the information into your own system, and you end up with an aggregate of many people's thinking, many people's insights. And that's just how you learn and grow. When Cinnamon and I first started selling on eBay, I had an MBA, but the emphasis was in nonprofit management. But the MBA that I got, in essence, had no obvious relevance to e-commerce selling. It was like, except for just in general, they teach you about, like what is a P&L statement and stuff like that. But and so what actually happens in real life is you have to study, learn, and apply specific technical ideas and lessons that make sense for you in the context in which you operate. And the person who taught us how to set up a P&L in QuickBooks was my business mentor guy named Ron Theory, who's a restaurateur in the area, and we meet every Saturday morning for breakfast and talk biz stuff. And he was like, "Where's your P&L?" And we were like, "We didn't make one." And he was like, "Dude, why don't you have a P&L?" And so I at least knew what he was talking about, but we didn't kind of know how to set it up for a small business like what we were creating. And so he literally came over to our house and walked through, here's how I set mine up, here's how you could set yours up. And what he did for his didn't make any sense for us in essence, but it kind of got us going, like it was a breadcrumb that we could start following. And so that's how this stuff works. You find a little idea, you follow it through, you apply it to your business, and you learn and grow. And I would just encourage everybody to do that. So I'm happy to recap this list if you'd like.
I'd love to hear these 7 steps or 7 techniques, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I called it methods, but you could call it tips or techniques, sure. Here we go. Number 1, create a high quality profit and loss tool and review it monthly, quarterly, and annually to look for opportunities to improve your profit. Number 2, set clear profit goals and work to achieve them over time. Number 3, widen the jaws. And you do that by growing your top line sales slower than you grow your expenses. Number 4, migrate to selling higher margin products or higher price products over time. Number 5, migrate to lower cost of sales and operating methods over time. Number 6, find coaching groups and mentoring groups that help you focus on profit. And number 7, study and learn everything you can about business finance. So there you have it. That's the list of 7 methods for creating a highly profitable e-commerce company. Not nearly as succinct or snazzy as Profit First as a title, but hopefully it's helpful concepts and ideas to get people pointed in the right direction.
I like it. As you said, I really like the wisdom of what you said. You got to take the clues, follow the breadcrumbs. Nice little phrase. And just in the end, you've got to create your own systems. Otherwise, it's not a unique business. And if you create the idea of a cookie cutter business is so incredibly common online. But the trouble is, if your business is exactly the same as everyone else, you have no competitive advantage. And in a very competitive landscape, certainly in the Amazon world, you'll make no profit. So you have to be willing to get your hands dirty and create your own business, but don't reinvent the wheel. This is the paradox, if you like, the VZ paradox. Maybe we'll appear one day in Jim Collins's books. I don't think so, but you've got to take a model that is close to your needs right now, like you did with the business owner you work with, a restaurant owner, not the same business, not the same challenges, but use that as a starting point, and then kind of bash it around until it roughly works for your business, and then take the next step of absorbing. You're so right on that. I think that's the reality of how it works. There's no cookie cutter business here. So we ought to talk about how people can work with you. Obviously, you've mentioned your coaching clients that are now not only CEOs of substantial established businesses, but the earlier stage replens sellers, which is, I know, an exciting venture for you guys. Yeah. So how do people learn more from you guys and work with you?
Sure. Yeah. The smartest, best place at this point is to go to winningonshopify.com which is our location for our blogs and training. That'll change in the near future, actually, as we rebrand. But that's the place to go to at this point. And of course, you can get your resources and my resources at theecommerceleader.com. So hit that website in association with this podcast. But yeah, happy to have people check out our coaching. You know, it's hilarious. We've really just had such a blast now with these small groups. We have 3 up and going, and I think in total something like 60 people in total now in that system. And we don't have any sales page. You cannot go find it online anywhere. So unfortunately, you can't join those. I can't refer anyone to how to do that, because we did it through our kind of challenges and that kind of thing. So, but if you want to, just contact me and learn more about our small groups, both the CEO small group and the Replens Mastermind small group. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. And in the near future, we'll have sales pages, which sounds ridiculous for me to say, but oops, I don't have any online sales page for those things, but it is what it is. So.
It's kind of cool. That's because it's early stages, and I guess you were testing the concepts. It's working really well. So, I mean, on my side, equally, I've got the 10K Collective Mastermind. If you wanted to come and join that, you need to be doing at least $50,000 a month. But I'm also creating a group which is, again, has no sales page, because I'm just trying to pull together the people sort of handpicked and having a lot of conversations one-to-one with people. But if you're interested, basically going to be a blend of sort of from the front coaching, a lot of mastermind work, and bringing in experts from my massive Rolodex, if you like, of people that I've built over 5-6 years of podcasting in the space. As well as selling. So if you want to check it out, the simplest thing is just to email michael@amazingfba.com, or you can check out the mastermind page. That's good. Also, a lack of sales page. Well, call ourselves internet marketers. It's quite crazy, but anyway, the stuff that works sometimes is in the earliest stages, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah. Any concluding thoughts on this topic? Really great topic. What are your final takeaways from this idea of creating a highly profitable e-commerce business?
I would just encourage everybody who's in their early days of their, selling venture, maybe if you're in your first few years, stick with it, stay the course, learn over time, realize what you got sold into, the shiny objects, and how they may or may not be real. But there is actually paths to highly profitable e-commerce companies. Absolutely true. It is real. It's not an illusion. And I know when you're in your early days and your sales might be coming together, but you just have no profit, you can think to yourself, there's not going to ever be a way that I can make real money from this. And it's not true. You have to learn the trade craft. And I would just say that my number one encouragement is just consider yourself an apprentice, like in any other trade skill. You're an apprentice plumber right now. You're an apprentice electrician. You're an apprentice dentist. You're just in your phase of learning and adapting these ideas to your specific context. And if you stick with it, you will find the tipping points that lead you to high profitability and to run a very successful business. If you quit, you won't. That's for sure. And so I would just encourage everybody, don't give up. If you're frustrated, if you're exhausted, take the breaks you need, regroup, reconsider what you're doing, and get back in the game in new and exciting ways, and focus on profit. And it really can come together successfully with almost any business model. And I just want people not to stop trying for frustration or out of a lack of current success.
Yeah, really love that. I think my background in piano teaching and piano learning would also kick in here. That it's in general, and it's been remarkably consistent across different disciplines now. Business, before it was piano. Guess what? It takes time to learn the skills and get the fluency necessary in the basic skills. A bit like driving a car. When you first learn to drive, you're trying to, I guess you guys drive automatics, but I started with what we call a stick shift in the UK. And basically, even trying to change gear leads to a lot of crunching of gears and jumping up and down and jumping around on the road. And you're very, very focused on what the heck am I doing with that before when you're in the early stages and you don't really have any space left in your head to worry about what's outside of your car. aka your competition, if you want to use it as a business analogy. But guess what? That's
Yeah.
kind of the most important thing. And over time, you master certain basic physical skills, and then you learn the art of reading the landscape around you as a driver. And it's very similar in e-commerce. You've got to get your head around the internal workings of your business, such as the profit and loss, statements, before you can really start to operate with awareness of the competition as well as what's going on internally. And it just takes time and practice. You're absolutely right. And I like that. Very encouraging words for everyone.
Thank you, sir. Yep. And really appreciate everyone who's been listening with us live as well. For those of you who have not checked out the E-commerce Leader podcast, we've got lots and lots of episodes.
Yeah.
And so go back and check out prior sessions. Hopefully you get hooked into it and it becomes your podcast of choice. We'd love your highest and best review and our subscription on whatever listener player platform you use. And thanks everybody for hanging out with us today and for participating in the conversation as well. Okay, Michael, thank you so much. As always, wonderful conversation.
Thank you to you as well. Yeah, great topic.
Okay, that's the end of our podcast. Cool. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us online. Appreciate the feedback here. People are saying thank you and great information, and really appreciate everybody's input. I really do hope if you're listening to this via replay or live with us right now, that you follow these 7 steps and really take notes on this, and then let us know how it goes. You can do this. If you're in the game, you're making sales, you can do this. It's not unobtainable. And so yeah, hopefully that sinks in and is an encouragement today.
Yeah, great words,
right,
man. Yeah, good encouragement.
As always, great stuff. Appreciate
Yeah.
you. Appreciate the chance to hang out with you. And you've always got deeper insights and different angles on all of this stuff. So in our show notes, when this podcast goes live, we'll have links to resources and that kind of thing. And that's probably the main reason to hit the ecommerceleader.com website is the show notes and links and that kind of thing. So you've gotten some great ones that you mentioned here today. So those will be good. So, all right, man.
Thanks, man. Great stuff.
Good times. All right, we'll end it here.